and really take a minute to think about the words of that song. This is living now, and I never knew what it was like to live. I think even before I picked up drugs or alcohol, I just always felt like the odd man out. I never could be connected and often felt rejected. And what I've learned through a lot of therapy, and I used to be ashamed if I told somebody I went to a lot of therapy. And I probably need more therapy today than I ever have needed. But I know who I am. While I can admit that I, need therapy, life is good. Life is good. I'm very, very blessed in business. Very privileged to be a pastor of a fast-moving church. Very blessed to had the vision to start a program called Serenity Village. But that's probably even more the reason why I need therapy. Because the majority of my relationships were screwed up because I was in them. And I had to come to realize that I was missing something. And I was missing a relationship with God. But that intimidated me. I didn't understand that. I grew up in a good family and different things. And that's why the 12 steps are so critical, because you really won't be living a life that's worth living if you're still plagued with insanity. Now, I am in the mind, but I can feel any way I want. I just can't do anything I want. So I had to learn how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. Well, back then I didn't understand Him, but I did it anyway. I didn't use that as an excuse. But I really couldn't live a life worth living, as the song said, with all those resentments, with all those fears, with all the different behaviors that I had, because my past at the time was dictating my future. And as long as that stuff continued to weigh me down, that's why God put the fourth and the fifth step in play, because those resentments and those fears, they still dictated how I was going to operate on a daily basis. So life still wasn't that much worth living. But then I learned how to admit to God, myself, and another human being the exact natures of my wrong. And that's where I learned to be honest with myself. I could never be honest with myself. So before I became honest with myself, I had to be honest with another person. And once that stuff left the darkness of my being and was transported into somebody else's ear to see what I'm really feeling, what I'm really thinking, what I've really done, that gave me the freedom. And then I was able to be honest with myself and with God. And one thing that always surprised me is the fact that, like I'm hiding anything from God, like He doesn't know already. But once I began to get honest with myself in a step 5 is when I really became entirely ready to have God remove my defects of character. Because once I became honest with myself, I looked at how really pitiful I was. I was a grown man with little boy issues. Now, some of you might have a hard time saying that about yourself because you feel like you're being, a self-pity. I'm so low. No, you got to be honest with yourself. You need to know your starting point. You hear me say it all the time. I mean, I made plenty of mistakes, but I'm not a mistake. And God can turn any situation around. But when I was able to be honest with myself is when I became so, what does the program teach us? Sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, I was sick of me. I was sick of me. And you know what? In my recovery, I was sick of me. My yeses didn't mean yes. My no's didn't mean no. I was a man without drugs with the still same behaviors, same feelings, same behaviors. So I had to become, at step 6, now you're farther away from your last drink, drug, or whatever your deal is. And you can really look at yourself and say, I'm ready, God, to have you remove these defects of character. Once you really look at those defects of character, which come out of the 4th step, then you can humbly ask God to remove your shortcomings. Then God, through the 12 steps, has you, become willing to make amends. Now, He doesn't say you have to make amends. Just become willing to make amends from everybody that you had wronged. And then the 9th step states, more or less, that you made direct amends whenever it would possible, except when to do so would harm them or others. So that's why we need the power of God. That's why we need the power of a sponsor, because we fail to recognize that our best thinking got us here. And we're good thinkers. I'm a great thinker, but I'm not a good doer. So I had to come to realize that the only way this is going to work is if I have somebody in my life that I can trust, Well, that was difficult for me. That's why I never did a third step. I never really made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him, because I didn't trust God. The reason why I didn't trust God is because I didn't trust myself. Anybody who has trust issues, they blame it on the other person, but the bottom line is you can't be trusted. You don't even know what you're going to be doing at 12 noon tomorrow. You could be back in the bar. So could I. So that's where our trust issues, the root of them is. But the 10th step last week, we talked about continued. Now, a lot of us, like me, who had to go through 11 treatments, I'm not good at continuing. I'm only good at more or less doing okay for a while until I get back what I lost, until everybody's back in my corner. But that's why the 10th step is the 10th step, and that's why the 10th step isn't the second step. Because by the second step, you haven't learned how to continue yet. See, I don't want to just rebuild, I want to build. I was so good at rebuilding, but I didn't know what building meant. I know how to get back what I lost. So the 10th step tells us continue to take personal inventory, not your neighbor's inventory, not your wife's inventory, your own inventory. And when you were wrong, promptly admit it. But you know what? We talked about that last week. We like to fester in it. We don't want to admit anything. Now, if we can't admit we're wrong, chances are you will not admit you're powerless. So you're right back at step one again. And step one is the only step they tell us in the big book that we need to work as close to perfect as possible. The rest of them are progress, not perfection. And then we, in the rooms that you go to in recovery, you get around people and they say they're perfectionists, but they make no progress. If you're a perfectionist, I would think you at least would make some progress. So the key here is we go into the 11th step, because, quite frankly, the only time that I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God is when I was in the backseat of a cop car, when a cop was following me home when I was drunk, when I didn't think I was going to take another breath because the dope was so strong in my system, when I thought my wife was going to find out about another lie, when I said that's when I had a conscious contact. Those foxhole prayers. But here it's a whole different dynamic in step 11, because in step 11, by now, some of our shortcomings should be removed. We should have experienced some forgiveness. We should have evaluated our resentments. We should have really recognized fear for what it is. It's false evidence appearing real. But if you think it's real, you're going to forget everything and run. And that's what I did my whole life. I forgot everything and run. Quite frankly, and don't get all freaked out because I felt like doing that today. That's just part of the process. That doesn't mean I wanted to go get higher. Maybe I did. Who cares? I didn't. Just because an addict or an alcoholic wants to quit doesn't mean they're not working the program. I'd rather be me than live a facade. I mean, quite frankly, if I'm pushing right, wrong's going to be coming at me. So the 11th step is a critical step, but I believe in all my attempts at recovery, I never really got to this step. Because you got to take it for what it is. But before I get to it, I'm going to talk about Philippians 4:19. It says, "And the same God who takes care of me will supply your needs." So that's the attraction rather than promotion that AA talks about. What's attractive about your recovery? Why would somebody want to be sober if they know you're sober? I mean, and then really ask yourself the question, what are your needs? What really are they? I mean, we look so often at external needs and we don't look at internal needs. So we all are an example, we all are a testimony, but it says the same God God is not going to lose his reputation over you. What God did for me, he can do for you. The key is, will you let him? He says, supply all your needs from his glorious riches. But so many of us are trying to get our own personal riches. We're trying to get our money back, get our house back, get our car back. We've done that 100 times and we still got high. How about get yourself back? But maybe you never even had yourself. Maybe you never knew who you were. I didn't, my thinking developed at a young age, long before I picked up dope. Like I said earlier, so what truly are your needs? Think about when you were in jail or treatment, or if you're a codependent in the room, when your loved one was missing and you didn't know if they were dead or alive, you had a conscious contact with God then. Because God removed all the clutter. And that's what it really is. What we think we need isn't really what we need. what God thinks we need is totally different than what we think we need. They're totally different. And that's why step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation. Now, the word sought is critical. God births us. We are out of our mother's womb, we are seeking something. Right away, you're seeking affirmation, food, whatever it would, love. So the word sought is something that God has given us. Just like I said, we're just being dependent people is a blessing. We're just dependent on the wrong things. Being chemically dependent is a blessing. We're extraordinary dependent people. We're just not dependent on the right things. So the word sought means that we need to seek through prayer and meditation. I ask you tonight, how often are you praying and meditating? Are you doing it as often as you did when you had nothing? You see, like Horvath says, it's easy to give God everything when you got nothing. But are you praying when you got to get up for work in the morning? I could do a better job of it. It seems like I'm always running behind. And it says, thought through prayer and meditation. Remember when you were in your darkest day, how easy it was to pray and meditate? Remember the treatment centers that you were at? You might have taken a walk. You might have rolled out of bed onto your knees. Maybe in the jail cell you were in. You prayed every day. And what happens is we get back in life and we forget to do this. So it says to improve our conscious contact with God. Where I see a lot of people failing is they think they're improving their... The only thing that we should strive for is to improve our conscious contact with God. But what happens typically is our conscious contact with God is on the decline. And we're trying to improve on everything else externally. And that should be our number one objective now that we've got our character defects out of the way, we've got our shortcomings, at least we're aware of them, to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. Well, I didn't really understand God when they were about ready to send me to prison, but I prayed to Him anyway. Did you really understand God when you thought you might die of an overdose or didn't think you'd get your family back, but you prayed to Him anyway? See, the word understanding, I think we use as an excuse. But here's what the kick is. By now we should be mature enough to say, praying only for the knowledge of His will. What are you praying for? For a boyfriend? For money? Do we remember what it was like when we prayed only, God, keep me alive? God, give me another chance. Now those were powerful prayers. And here we are. But what it's saying here in the 11th step is now, by the 11th step, it should be not so much about us and more about Him and other people. That's why it says praying only. It doesn't say pray sometimes. It says praying only. That's the only thing we're supposed to pray for. Doesn't that keep it simple? I mean, do your prayers really need to be that long? If you said, God, I'm praying for the knowledge of your will. And you can also, I'm not telling anybody how to pray. Everybody's different. Everybody's got a different personality. But that's what this step says. And the power to carry that out. Now, how many of us tonight are operating within our own strength, trying to take care of everything? When we go back to step 1, we realize we had no strength whatsoever, and it's only the strength of God that got us out of the jam we were in to begin with. Why shouldn't we still be utilizing that strength and that power that it took to get a dope fiend like me out of the dope house to live everyday life? And it really simplifies it. They tell me that it's a simple program for complicated people, because I complicate it. But it teaches me right here, praying only for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. Now, if you haven't worked the previous 10 steps, your prayers are going to be all over the place. Remember how simplistic your prayer was back in the day? Not even understanding what the knowledge, what his will was, and still not understanding it. In the 12 and 12 it says, prayer and meditation are the principal means for a conscious contact with God. When is the last time that you had a conscious contact with God? Do we pray now today out of convenience when we have time? That's what we do. I do it too. My wife doesn't do it. Every morning she rolls out of bed onto her knees. I wish I was that disciplined. And I'm a pastor. Can we just get real? I think that's why we talk about these things in this meeting, that we need to pray more. We need to pray for and meditation. When's the last time you had some alone time with God? See, in those foxhole prayer moments, they weren't short prayer. They were just, right, I got exactly, God, what do you want from me in this situation? And when we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, our emotions, our intuitions, and vitally needed support. That's why everybody gets twisted in their recovery, because they ain't praying. When you're not praying, you hold on to resentments. When you're not praying, you got fear creeping in. When you're not praying, you're full of anxiety. When you're not praying, you got all the answers. When you're not praying, you're going to do it your way again. When you're not praying, you think you got this thing licked. But when you are praying, you're demonstrating humility at a point where God will exalt you. Because when I did pray like I should pray now, God truly exalted me. But think of it as if that what it's saying here is you're likewise going to deprive your mind, your emotions, you're going to be emotional wreck, and your intuitions. You're not going to be sound-minded if you're not praying. As the body can fail its purpose for lack of nourishment, so can the soul. See, I mean, when's the last time you nourished your soul? I mean, I used to nourish my soul all the time when I was first getting sober. When I really needed something, but now I'm too busy. You know, I'm speaking about me here. That's why I need these meetings. Because if I stay as busy as I am, things probably aren't going to end up well. See, my wife and I are on this, I don't even know what it is, some cleansing thing today. I haven't eaten all day. I'm about ready to drop right here. I don't know what I'm cleansing. I'm not trying to beat a UA or anything. But that's what it's saying right there. I mean, lack of nourishment if you don't pray. We'll need light of God's reality, the nourishment of His strength, and the atmosphere of His grace. Now, how can you tell me that AA isn't about God? This comes right out of the AA book. All biblical terms. There is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring a relief and benefit. We know that's true. We've experienced that. That's why they say the newcomer is the most important person in the meeting, because when we're new, we're hungry. When we're new, we're humble. When we're broken, we're humble. But when God starts to put us back together, we turn our backs on Him. It's so important that we talk about this stuff. Because what it's saying here is so true. It says, but when they are logically related and interwoven, the result of an unshakable foundation for life. I got a lot of people right now that are getting shook up, and I say that's a good thing. It says, as we've seen, self-searching is the means by which a new vision, action, and grace to bear upon a dark and negative side of our natures. Who's got a dark and negative side of themselves? Each and every one of your hands should be raised. You want me to tell you what yours is as an individual? I've been around you a little bit. We all got it. I got it. You got it. And if you pretend that it's not there, it'll always take priority over what you're trying to do. You can't pretend that you're not an addict. I mean, I'm okay. You can't. When you're not okay, you can't say you're okay. When you're a mess, you've got to tell somebody you're a mess. But the key here is that we got to understand that there is a dark, negative side of ourselves. That's biblical. That's called the flesh. I'm going to talk about it on Sunday. It is a step of development of a kind of humility that makes it possible for us to receive God's help. Yet it is only a step. We want to go further. Are you willing to go further in your recovery after you get 6 months clean? A lot of us aren't. A lot of us aren't. We think, okay, we're fine now. We're just going to hit and miss our meetings and we're going to go back to life as usual. Life has never been usual. When has your life ever been usual? And then we say we just want to be normal. You're never going to be normal. That's a blessing. I'm not normal. God didn't create you to be normal. He didn't want you to blend in. He wants you to stand out. He wants you to stand out and be you. And that's what's so important here. So we need to continue to go further. It says meditation is something which can always be further. Say further. Further. Say it again. Further. Further developed. But that doesn't typically happen. It gets lessened. And I think that's why we need to talk about this stuff. It says it has no boundaries. What that means is with God, there's no limits. The Bible says that God will always give you more than you can ask or think, either width or height. It says, but its object is always the same, to improve our conscious contact with God. I got people making decisions to move out of here, and they're in worse condition than they were when they moved in here. They might be sober, but they have no peace, utter turmoil. They're trying to improve on their external being, their circumstances, but nothing's changed inside. And that's what's so important that we recognize there, that this is so improving with His grace, with His wisdom, with His love. And let always remember that meditation is the reality intensely practical. I mean, however it works for you, make it work for you. For Doug, it might be standing on his head. For me, it could be sitting by the lake. For you, it might be in the shower. Who knows? I don't know. Before a sermon, I run around on Sundays, but when I'm in the shower, God speaks to me. I mean, God, everybody's different. Everybody's different. You know, I mean, whatever it takes. I mean, but you got to go. See, I was a whatever it take type of dope fiend. I got to be a whatever it take type of God fiend. Just because I'm sober, I'm still a fiend, but I'm a God fiend. I'm dependent on God. I can't go a day without Him. I can't go an hour without Him, just like the dope. That's why my dependencies are so critical. And what it's saying here is one of the first fruits is emotional balance. Well, a lot of us aren't very good at that. With it can be broadened and deepen the channel between ourselves and God as we understand Him. See, we want that channel to be broadened and deepened. It says, now what about prayer? Prayer is the raising of the heart and mind, and in a sense that includes a meditation. Prayer is commonly understood, a petition to God. Having opened our channel the best we can. See, a lot of times our channel isn't very clear because of our resentments and our fears and our shortcomings and our character defects and our unforgiveness. So that's why I said last week with the 10th step, how would you even know you're wrong if you've been wrong your whole life? And it's humbling to admit that you've been wrong your whole life. That's not easy to admit. But it says, just saying it over and over will often enable you to clear the channel of a choked up with anger, fear, frustration, and misunderstanding, and permit us to return to surest help of all, our search for God's will, not our own in the moment of stress. At these critical moments, we must remind ourselves it's better to comfort than to be comforted. The best way for you to feel comfort is to comfort somebody else. And don't go looking for love in all the wrong places. Where are you seeking comfort? See, a lot of times we want to be understood versus understand. And that's what it's saying now in the big book right now, in the 12 and 12. It's so critical that we get this, that God is doing something. Understand or to be understood, to love or to be loved. I mean, a lot of times we want to be loved because we don't know how to love. And what we thought love was not what love is. I've seen many people stay in relationships that were terrible just to be in a relationship. We've got sometimes, just like for me, for the 5th step, in order for me to be honest with myself, I had to be honest with another person. In order for me to be understood, I need to learn how to understand. In order for me to be loved, I needed to learn how to love. That's what the 12 and 12 is saying here. It says we will be following intent of step 11. NA, it works how and why. Throughout our recovery, one of the things which stands out as a result of working the steps is our success in building a relationship with God of our understanding. See, are you still building a relationship with God? That's the real question tonight as we look at the 11th step, because it says sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. I mean, it's always to be improving in that area. We continued with working the following steps, each one of which was designed to clear away whatever barriers. I had a lot of barriers stopping me from serving God. Might stand between our higher power and ourselves. As a result, we opened to receive our higher power's love and guidance directly into our lives. We no longer shy away from spiritual growth. Remember when you first got sober, you were so hungry to grow spiritually, but what happened? See, we're always going to be seekers. And if we're not seeking God, we're going to be seeking something else. You may think what you're seeking is harmless, but I'm telling you it's very harmful. Because if it isn't God, it's going to blow up right in your face. Anything that trumps God, you will lose. The Bible says that God is a jealous God. That means he's not some angry, mad person. I think common courtesy, if you did drugs like I did, God should come first in my life. I didn't murmur and complain when crack came first. Before my kids, before my work, before my bank account. And that's why we got to understand that we're all seekers. And it says it has been so essential to maintaining the peace of mind we found. We had it, but sometimes, one thing I've learned about the Spirit is the first thing to go and the last thing to come back. I just talked to my buddy, who's here tonight. He had a couple years sobriety, and he lost it. He was out there for 6 months. He's fighting to get his spirit back. He's a good man. First thing to go and the last thing to come back. It ain't easy. You don't want to lose the ground that you have made up. So the 11th step is so critical to doing this. And it says, through the temptation to pray for a particular result may be great. We must resist the urge to do so if we want to experience the rewards of the 11th step. Praying for specific solutions to specific problems is not the answer. So what that means is this. I want you to really look at this. If you're praying, now this is not me saying this. This is what the NA is saying, and it's biblical. Now, if you're praying for a specific solution to a problem to God, more or less what you're saying to God is, I know the answer better than you do. Versus praying for only the knowledge of His will. What if His answer to your prayer is different than your answer, and how grateful are you tonight for unanswered prayers? What if you would have gotten everything you prayed for? So that's what it's saying here. It's so important that we grasp this. It really makes it simple, but it says practicing the 11th step. We got to learn to practice this stuff. It involves a daily discipline of prayer and meditation. This discipline reinforces our commitment to recovery. I remember the day when God cleared my entire life to the side, and that's when I learned how to pray. Nobody would come see me. Didn't have anything left. It was easy to pray then. But now that God has given me my life back, does He still get the number one position in my life? And that's what it's saying. Living a new way of life, developing further our relationship with our higher power. Through this daily practice, we begin to glimpse at the limitless freedom we can be afforded through God's love. NA basic text. Many of us begin to appreciate our recovery when we get to... So many people that I see in this program don't appreciate their recovery. Remember what it was like to just ask God to get you out of that situation? When is the last time that you've thanked God for your recovery? But a lot of us don't appreciate our recovery when we get to the 11th step. In the 11th step, our lives take a deeper meaning. By surrendering control, we gain a far greater power. The nature of our belief will determine the manner of our prayers and meditations. Everybody's different. God will not force His goodness on us, but He will receive it if we ask. God wants to be good to you. Quite frankly, God was good to you before you were good to you. God is the one that taught me how to be good to myself. By surrendering control, we gain a far greater power, it says. And it says we usually feel something indifferent at the moment. Don't see the changes in our lives till later. See, a lot of times when you're in it, you don't see it. A lot of people think they're struggling, and I look at them growing. But a lot of people think they're doing well when they're not doing very well at all. See, it goes both ways. That's why God uses people to really help us out in our lives. And it says, some of the things that didn't work for us in the past might work today. We take a fresh look at each day with an open mind. How open is your mind now? Is it as open as it was when you first got sober? Is it as open as it was when you first started to believe in God, if you're not an addict under the sound of my voice? It says, we know that we pray for God's will, we will receive what's best for us, regardless of what we think. That's hard. Because sometimes we think we know better. Sometimes we think that I know what's best for me. Sometimes I think that you don't understand me. But I think we need to check ourselves tonight to understand that our best thinking got us here. And I don't care if you got 10 years sober. You're still not a sound thinker. Is God's will better for you than yours? Is the question you have to answer. And you might not even know what God's will is for yourself. But it's so important that we recognize what it's saying here. It says, we learn again now in another text, it's saying that we learn to be careful of praying for specific things. We pray that God will show us His will and that He will help us carry that out. In some cases, He makes His will so obvious to us that we have lived. Well, you know what's obvious? Go to meetings, be honest, get a sponsor, do what you're told. That's God's will for your life. Well, that doesn't sound fun. Those 4 keys will open up so much freedom in your life you won't know what to do with yourself. Out of those 4, how many have you taken back today by itself? The saddest thing for me to do what I've done in 10 years is for people to come to my face and say they're going to do one thing and do totally something different. But I was one of those people. So I don't cast judgment. It hurts, but I hurt people, so I should open myself up to be hurt too. So I can't be surprised when people don't do what they say they're going to do. I can't be surprised when people change on a dime and say one thing and do another. Breaks my heart, but it's part of the deal. That's what makes me not want to get close to people anymore in this program. I've been hurt too many times. My wife's been hurt too many times. People that think you're close to them, they do stuff that hurts you. And they do it sober. That tells me that it has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. It's a living problem. It's a living problem. It's a living problem, and that's why we need God. We need God to tell us what to do. We need God to put people in our lives. I mean, it's not that difficult. In some cases, He makes it so obvious. In others, our egos are self-centered that we won't accept God's will for us without another stroke. Sometimes we just got to go relapse again just to get it. When are you at your best? When you're at your worst. You're at your best when you're at your worst. When you're humble. When you're open-minded. When you just lost everything. That's when you have the greatest joy. See, what we got to come to realize is that maybe we don't have nothing at all. Maybe it is truly a daily reprieve on a daily basis that this could be my last day. Maybe all this stuff don't mean nothing. Maybe without peace it's meaningless. Maybe without purpose it's meaningless. Maybe God saved me so I could help other people. Maybe my job doesn't matter and I just go to work because I got to pay my bills. And I do the best job I can while I'm there. I don't complain because at a time I wasn't even employable because of my criminal. Maybe I should be grateful that I got my driver's license back after multiple DWIs. Maybe I should be grateful that I can see my kids when I smoked crack when they were in the back seat as babies. Maybe I should be grateful that I can buy a couple vehicles for some my employees when I couldn't even open a checkbook 10 years ago. Maybe I can be grateful that if I got over 150 employees, that I have a responsibility not to the employee only, but to the children of the employee on the decisions I make. Maybe I should be grateful that the very God that picked me out of the dope house is the very God that keeps me on level ground today. Maybe I should start improving my conscious contact. Or maybe I've gotten too big for my britches. Maybe I'm one thought away from mass destruction. Maybe tonight I might get so irritable that I might disappear. Maybe tonight I might get so irritated with her that I want to get a divorce. Maybe tonight I'll see something on TV that reminds me about cocaine, and I'll go do some cocaine. Those maybes creep up too. Maybe I'll never see you again. Maybe that'll be the last hug we ever had. Maybe we'll hear about you or me on the news. Maybe your kids will call tomorrow and wonder where you are. Maybe your probation officer will say you didn't show up for the UA this week and you're about ready to go to jail. Maybe because you didn't work a 4-step, now you feel so uncomfortable in your own skin, you're going to go take some pills tonight. Maybe you're living at a sober house. Just because you got $600 in the bank, you think you got the world. Look, maybe that $600 will be gone by tomorrow because you choose to go relapse. Maybe you're going to start stealing again. Maybe you might not make it back. And I'll strike the word maybe. If you have made it back, most definitely God's got a plan for your life. Because I shouldn't have made it back. I shouldn't have had one more breath. I shouldn't have been able to see my kids. I shouldn't have been able to open a bank account. I shouldn't have been able to get my license. I shouldn't have been able to build, but God had another plan. Because I've learned to seek Him, to improve on my relationship with Him, to pray only for the knowledge of His will for my life, and ask Him for the power to carry it out. God, give me the power to carry it out. Just get me home to my bed so I can go to sleep tonight to start over tomorrow. That's all the power I need over the next 4 hours, God, because today has not been an easy day. Today I've been lied to 20 times. Today I've been taken for granted 30 times. Today I had to come face to face to somebody that was talking smack about me, and I wanted to do something, but God says you can't do anything. That'll ruin your testimony. Maybe today I was going to quit, and I didn't. I couldn't look you in the face if I wanted to do what I wanted to do. It ain't about what I want to do. It's about what He wants to do in me and in you. Take yourself out of the equation for once in your life. It ain't about you. It ain't about what happened to you. It isn't about what you did or didn't do. It's about that God has a plan for you. And you're part of it, but you're a limited part of it because His power will carry it out. His knowledge will carry it out. Or maybe you won't do anything at all. Maybe you'll slowly but surely decline right back to the abyss that you came from. I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know. I go to NA meetings down off Franklin. They tell me, don't use. Every time I walk in the door. And I haven't used. But life ain't easy. I'm a runner. I'm an escape artist. I'm a quitter. I don't like to listen to people. I like to do my own things. But if I'm honest with myself, which I learned in step 5, where has that gotten me? It got me to places that I never knew existed, to the darkest places on the planet. The most lonely hellholes in my addiction. So what is God's will for us? It says it in 1 Thessalonians. Rejoice always. When's the last time you rejoiced? When's the last time you said, you know what, I didn't get high today? Pray continually, it says. Give thanks in all circumstances. It doesn't say give thanks for all circumstances. For this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Will you do it? Will you get out of your own way? Or will you throw that piece of paper in the garbage can, as I see every week some do? Because when that piece of paper leaves your hand, envision your life going with it, right in the garbage can. We'll take a 10-minute break.